Go.
Okay, we're going to change the water pump in this 50 horse Mercury today. We're going to do it redneck style. We're not going to pull it out of the water or anything. We've actually just used our hoist to lift it up a few inches so we can get this other boat under it. So,
Okay.
first we need to do is remove the linkage to the gearbox or to the bottom end, whatever. So we're going to need an open end wrench for that. So hopefully we have some. We're going to need small. I don't even know if I have one that small. Okay. First we had to do is sort of take a look at where the jam nut is, because we always had to try to position this in the same position again once we reconnect. But is there a pair of pliers up? Oh, right behind you there, Jim. Or is there one there? Well, first off, we don't have too many open end wrenches because we're in Florida with no tools. So undo the lock nut. If I can. You can edit all the stuff out of here. That's it. I'm going to put this in a different gear and see if we got a competent gear. Okay, let me ice on it. Ship. That is
Go.
threading on though, isn't it? Okay, to get at the threads where the jam nut was hidden, so we had to end up putting it in forward to change that. I think I went down to the jam nut all the way down, and it's still not undone. Now, how did they do that? It must be two threaded parts. I'm always getting so stiff when I go further. Right there, because I'm going to break something. Be awful to break that off. See how tight that is? Okay, got the little lock nut, jam nut, and collar is a little stiff, so let's spray a little WD-40 on it, because the last thing we want to do is break off this 3/16 threaded rod. Then we'd be in trouble.
Okay, so while we're taking that off, can you explain to me, for somebody that's never worked on a boat before, that's just bought in a boat, and has gotten into this problem where they have to change this particular part, can you explain why, if the part is down at the bottom of the motor here, why we have to start with the jam nut?
Not actually in the bottom, but it's in this area right here.
Okay.
And the only way we can drop the bottom off to get at it is getting rid of the gear linkage.
Okay.
The gear linkage is always the first thing we got to do is get it undone, and this one is giving us a few problems. Why is it so?
So after moving from forward to reverse, you can see that we're totally disconnected with our linkage. Now it's time to move on to the next step. What is the next step, Tom?
Okay, our next step is going to be, we have a keel, or a lot of people call it different things. This trim tab or keel, you always want to take a look at what position it is always good. If you had a magic marker or something, put a little mark across right here, just to know where to exactly to put it back. Because what this does is keeps the torque out of your steering wheel. Normally that's on a slight degree this way, turn this way, especially for the big motors, because the prop, the way it's turning, is always pulling one way, so you compensate by setting that trim tab or that little keel. But we had to remove that first, then these 4 nuts, drop the lower end, and we're at our water pump.
Okay.
Millimeter wrench.
And what size socket are you using?
I'm just using a 3/8 drive with a 13 millimeter socket.
Okay. Now remember, when you're working with hand tools like this, it's important to, it's not necessarily important, but it's a rule of thumb that you want to match the drive size of your ratchet to the bolt size that you're using. So if the bolt itself has a diameter of less than 3/8 but greater than 1/4 inch, you'll use a 3/8 ratchet. That way you won't over torque your bolt when you're putting it in or removing it.
Tab or the finger exposes the one bolt under here that we have to undo. And so we're going to, I just feel that one. I think that one's getting up to 15. I can't see it. But we're going to just try it. Easy to notice we have a boat underneath us, just in case we drop something. At least it's not going to go in the water and we'll never find it again. So, okay, we got the nut off there. This one is a little too big, but when you're in the water, what can you do?
So repeat this bolt removing step on the other side where there are
two more
bolts.
I'm going to hold the bottom end from falling when you undo them.
Okay. So for that, I'm going to put the camera down. But what I'm going to do after he takes his 2 bolts out is I'm going to do the same over here. And then he's going to hold on to this while it falls. Okay, so I got my 2 bolts off. And now
Gear, actual drive shaft. And this is a little changer or gearbox changer that we disconnected first off to get the linkage. But just want to see what fell. It wasn't there. So the washer that fell.
So where is the water pump that we're changing?
Okay, now we're changing the water pump. It is right there.
Okay.
That's the water pump. We're going to, normally, if you're in a good condition, we would set that in a vise where we could work on it nicely, but instead we're going to have to straddle with our legs. Let's see if I can find a small, probably a 10 millimeter. Yes. One other rule of thumb that you should do, you have to find out which way this rotates. You can tell by turning it. One way it turns freely, one way it doesn't. We know this one turns counterclockwise. I mean clockwise, sorry. This one turns clockwise. It's going to be very important a little later when we put the water pump together. Okay, we have our 4 bolts out. Now we're going to lift the water pump housing. And the impeller was very good on that one. Here, I thought the impeller would have been gone. There is some parts. Oh yes, there is parts of the impeller gone. There, folks, you can see it right there. So it is a good time that we are changing. I was just looking, see the different vanes. See how that one's wore right off. That one's broke off. This one's broke off. So now when we go to lift this off, you have to be very careful because there is a keyway, and there's going to be a little key in that if it comes out. We'll take the thresh washer. There's a little thresh washer on the top and bottom of always of these. So we're going to pull the top one off. Let's see if we can get this past this little keyway. Come on. Terrible thing, we don't even have a pair of pliers here. We're in fine shape, aren't we? Gently pry it off. Oh, there we go. Make sure you don't lose. See the little keyway? And the key sitting right there. So don't lose that. It comes off gently. Did you notice how the vanes are all curled?
Mm-hmm.
That is, it rotates clockwise. So this is going to be very important when we put it back together, because the new pump, I mean, oh, right underneath it. I'll show you folks, actually, a lot of times I'll remove a water pump, the impeller, and see nothing wrong with it. Well, at least this time we have obvious wear. 3 of the fins have been broke off, so that would really deter as far as the water flow. One other very important thing now is we had to make sure we clean everything up. There were broken pieces of rubber in the actual water pump housing. We'll get rid of all that. The 4 nuts we removed, 4 bolts. It's always good. I would like to, in perfect conditions, I would use anti-seize on these 4 bolts. Since we don't have anti-seize, a neighbor had some WD-40, so we're going to spray the 4 bolts with WD.
So if you were using anti-seize, would you use the copper or would you use the silver? Or would it matter?
I don't think it would matter. I always use the silver. But okay, so we got that in position. Next thing you know, it's always good to grease the bottom wear plate. Just because we're putting in a dry impeller, so just for the initial startup. I don't have grease. Like I said, we're at a fishing camp with nothing but a little bit of supplies around, so we're going to use, the next best thing would be butter. As I said, this is just a temporary thing, so we're going to put some butter on it just to get things nice and slippery.
And after you catch your fish, you can always take this apart again and fry them on that while it's still hot. They'll get a nice taste of butter on them.
So I like just the impeller first off. It's brand new and it's going to be going in a dry condition, so I always like just to butter things up. Next very important thing is the key. The key, usually we use a little bit of grease to hold it in place. Let's see if butter works. Oh, not quite as well, but we got to sit that in position, hold it right there, slide our impeller down, line it up with the keyway. This could be a little bit more difficult thing. Okay. The grease holding the keyway is a very nice thing. Butter isn't holding it quite as well, so we're going to have to see if we can. Come on. I think we're in position. Let's see if I can tap that down a little bit. I gained no tools, but tap that down, bottom it out. There's a little thresh washer. Again, we're going to butter everything up a little bit more. We have a thresh washer that goes on the bottom and a thresh washer that goes on the top. Buttered it up nicely. We're going to slide it down. We already put our thresh washers in place. We slide down. This is the important part. Remember how I was telling you about finding out which way this rotation was. We knew this one was was clockwise. So now we just put a little pressure up against our rubber. We have to spin it and push down. And that's what gives us the curve to the rubber vanes. Very important thing. You need those vanes in the proper way or you'll be in big trouble. it's just a matter of reassembling. There's one more point to show you here, just so you don't wear out the size of the side of your drive shaft. Since this impeller is always a little bit off-centered to make it where it sort of makes an oblong pump, so as it's spinning it opens and closes somewhat. We have to, when we're tightening this, position is in position. Well, this one actually doesn't have much play, so that's good. But you always try to make sure you center up your hole with your drive shaft. And like I said, some motors there's enough play in it where you have the rubbers actually pushing the one way, and you always have to do this up. This is when air is nice. Still looks crooked, doesn't it? My leg brace is starting to get tired, so I'm squeezing this thing. There, it's just a nice snug.
So now you're just going hand tight with these, correct?
I'm giving it, yeah. I mean, if we had a torque wrench, we would torque it down a little bit, but I am just giving it a good snug tight.
Now, if you had a torque wrench, what would you probably set these to?
You know, I wouldn't want to really say, because I would hate to give you the wrong information.
So look that up in your boat service manual.
I think I'm giving it about a 10-pound torque. By hand, I mean, my feel's pretty good with wrenches, but like I said, I wouldn't want to be quoted on that. Up inside is our rubber housing right there. That's okay. That's where our water pump seals to. Oh, this is a nice. Okay, last one. This nice note down. Another important thing: pull your shifter up so that you can reach it later on once you put it back in together. So sometimes it can be, that's neutral, as we push down it is forward, so you want to go up, and that should be in reverse. Now the next thing is just a matter of putting it back together. Make sure there's a rubber. Oh, that's in place. There's always a rubber. There's a rubber type seal for the water pump to pump that pumps the water up, and that meshes with this. So now the whole key is to just gently put it in. I'm going to put a little bit of butter up. Put a little butter up on our spleen drive just to make hopefully the mesh a little bit nicer together. Butter is just one thing nice with butter. It's not quite as much. Okay, I want to pull it back up in there. Maybe not. Our keel. Again, you have to position that keel where you normally with a mark, and since we didn't mark it because we didn't need to, water pickup. Just do it both straight. I said, if it was a big motor, we would have to turn that slightly this way just to take up for the torque. If it was a regular rotation prop. If it was a counter rotation prop, we would do it the opposite. slide in there, and the blower started.